What's up guys? Today we're finishing off the twin bed from last week by adding a live edge headboard. If you guys haven't seen that video, the link is in the description below. I'd recommend checking it out. The headboard was already designed along with the bed frame, so no designing from scratch this time. I just went into SketchUp and deleted the frame, leaving us with this week's build. The most expensive part of this build is the live edge board. It's kind of funny how the bark of the tree used to be scrap. Now people are charging a premium for this wood just leaving it on. So instead of cutting it off, they do less work and you end up paying more. I was fortunate enough to have a friend who gave me a few slabs from a maple tree that fell a few years back. The first thing I did was take my circular saw out and cut the board right down the middle. This makes the slab much easier to manage. Plus, as part of the design, I wanted the live edges to be facing each other, kind of like a river table. Next, I pulled out the planer. Now I've said this before and it still holds true. You don't need a planer. It's just nice to have. You can flatten a slab just as effectively with a router sled. In fact, that's what I used to use before this planer, and I still use it when the slab is wider than the max width of the planer. I've made a video on a $10 DIY router sled you guys should check out. Links to that will be in the top right corner as well as the description below. This slab was pretty twisted, so in order to eliminate the twist, I had to create a planer sled. I used a scrap 2x6 and attached a perpendicular block at the end of it. Then I placed the slab on the sled and used the shims to get it as level as possible, making sure it didn't rock. I could then run it through the planer to get one side flat. It did slip off the sled pretty much every time, but that's okay because there was enough pressure from the rollers, the shim slid along with the slab, so it still went through straight. If I had a glue gun, I would have used that to more securely attach the slab to the sled. I'm definitely going to get one as it was annoying to have this thing slip every time. Once I had one side relatively flat, I was able to flip it over and flatten the other side. I did the exact same thing with the second slab. And once I had them both flat, I ran them both through the planer until they were the same thickness. I started with just over 2 inches of thickness and finished with just over 1.5, so I'd call this pretty successful. With the flattening over, for the first time I could really see what this headboard was going to look like once complete. And I was impressed. Who knew such beautiful wood would be hiding under 7+ years of weathering? Before you ask, I have no idea how maple gets a red paint color in it, but if you know, I'd love to learn, so feel free to leave it in the comments below. I quickly cut and glued up the post that would support the headboard, then got back out to the slab. When I was originally cutting the slab, I ended up using a 2x4 and those aren't straight. So I recut the edge with my circular saw using a 4-foot level as a guide. Also, this slab was from the dead center of the tree, so as the wood dried, it caused a lot of cracking right down the middle, which I wanted to cut out. If you look closely, you can see that my circular saw doesn't have a perfect 90 degree. The plate bends, and even if you bend it back, too much pressure and it'll bend again. I bought this used for $20, so no loss, but I would like to get a new one. For now this does the trick, I just had to use a hand plane to finish the job. There's something oddly satisfying about using a hand plane. If you have a chance to get one at a good deal, I'd recommend it. My dog Ash loves to chase the shavings around. I'm pretty sure the board was already straight at this point, I just wanted to watch him chase more shavings. After that, I used 2 palm sanders to remove any blade marks. With the glue dry on the posts, I planed them down to their final thickness of 3 inches. Then I squared up the ends of the table saw, making sure they were the same length. After checking to make sure they fit together perfectly on the bed frame, I was about 1 inch off, and I have no idea how this happened. Clearly I missed a measurement while gluing them up, or I assumed I cut them 1 inch longer for error, but I actually didn't. Regardless, this was an easy fix. I set my fence to 9 inches, and then I set my table saw blade to 1.5 inches. Then I made a 9-inch cut. Then I could easily cut the rest using my miter gauge to make sure that the board was a perfect 90 degrees to the blade. After a quick sand, I could test fit the board to the head frame. I first screwed the posts in. I used clamps to hold it in place while making sure everything was perfectly square. With both posts square, I was then able to take the exact measurement I needed to cut the slab. Then I cut the slab down to 35 inches. Once cut down to their final length, I drilled a few pocket holes in the back of both slabs on each side. For mounting, I used a clamp to hold it in place while I screwed it in. This took a bit of patience as I had to play with it until the top sat flush with the posts. Once the first one was screwed in, I could clamp the second one into place. Knowing the base of the bed frame was level, I could make sure the bottom piece was level by ensuring it was the same distance from the frame on both sides. And once I was happy with its placement, I could screw it in. And for the first time ever, I could see exactly what my final product was going to look like. Not too shabby. After taking pictures and sending it to the client as well as all of my friends, I disassembled it and began the finishing process. I've never left bark on a live edge project before, so I wasn't exactly sure what to do. I had recently purchased a few cans of Varathane's triple thick polyurethane, which I had planned on using for the face of this live edge. So I first blew all the dust out with an air compressor, then I figured I'd just soak the brush and then dab the poly into the bark, making sure every little nook and cranny was covered. Pro tip, doing the live edge first and then both faces after really helps control edge strips. 2 hours later, I came back and sanded the poly with 320 grit paper, wiping off the dust with a microfiber cloth. Then I added a second coat. This time, I only did a second coat to the park as well as the front face. The back face was super smooth already, and this is the extra thick stuff, so one coat is usually enough. I do more coats on the front of a finished piece because I like to do some wet sanding and some polishing, and having a thicker coat of Varathane really helps with that. The next morning I gave it a third coat, and after a few hours brought it inside for polishing. First, I wet sanded everything progressively, starting with 600 grit and working my way up to 2000 grit. My brother was visiting for the day, and as you can tell, his dog is not very camera shy. I'd love to say I got a dogless shot of me finishing the second slab, but sadly that wasn't the case. Once it was done, I could reassemble the headboard using the screw holes from before, ensuring everything still lined up perfectly. And what's that? The post somehow magically became stained overnight? My camera must have died or something while I was doing that part. I finished it the same way I finished the entire bed frame. So, if you guys want to see that, you'll have to watch the other video, I guess. Link in the description. Later that day, I took it to the client's house and we assembled it. First we assembled the frame, this time using wood glue, to take the 3 parts and make it one. With the frame looking good, we positioned the headboard and attached it. I had to back off the screws a little bit, holding the headboard into the posts. Just a turn or two, to give me enough wiggle room to allow the posts to perfectly line up with the legs already on the frame. We decided to not glue the headboard when we were attaching it to the bed frame, in case it was to be disassembled in the future for transport. Once the posts were on, I could re-tighten the screws in the headboard. Then we put the mattress on and it was done. I'm extremely happy with how it turned out, and so was the client. The weather accelerator stain was chosen to match the floors. I think it does just that. I think the weathered look of the frame really makes the bright color of the live edge maple pop. I'm also happy to announce that 2 coats of the extra thick Varathane did an excellent job on the bark. If you like what you saw, feel free to subscribe. Also, a like would go a long way in helping out a young channel like mine grow. Don't forget to check out part 1 of the bed frame, link in the description. And thanks for watching.